Hello my sewing buddies and welcome back to the channel. In today's tutorial, I am going to show you how to create a simple cottagecore dress with collars and some puff sleeves and a little ruffle on the hemlines too. So if you want to see how I made it, then keep on watching. So the first thing I did was drape the bodice patterns. So I actually just basically drape it on my daughter's body. She did not want to include that in the video, but pretty much you will see these two pieces of fabric. I just place it on the front and then trace it, and then I did the same thing on the back. And now I am just going to make the lines nice and straight and pretty, and I'm going to cut out the bodice pieces. The front bodice doesn't have any darts at all, but I will add darts at the back just to give the dress some shape. I ended up adjusting it, making it narrower and taller. So instead of 3 inches wide, it became 2 inches wide and 6 inches tall. Now it's time to trace the neckline because I will be making collar patterns. So on a separate piece of paper, I'm just going to trace out the shape of the front and back collar or neckline. It will be 2 inches wide and I will need 4 pieces for this because I will have 2 separate collars. Now it's time to trace out the sleeve. So I am going to trace the arm side of the front bodice and the back bodice. And then I am just going to clean it up a little bit, make it a little straighter or curvier on the top of the shoulders. I also pre-wash the fabric. It's also called pre-shrinking your fabric, especially if you are using cotton. So do not skip that step just because it will just make sure that the dress will still fit after washing it. So the front bodice is cut on fold and the back bodice is going to be 2 separate pieces because I will add zipper at the back. Now I am going to modify the sleeve pattern. As you can see, I cut it in half and I will be adding 3 inches right at the center because I want this dress, the sleeves to be nice and voluminous. And I also extended the length of the sleeve just because my daughter wants it long sleeve. So I just kind of extended that and that was so easy to do. Here I modified the colors because my daughter doesn't like a Peter Pan color. So she just wants the edges to be like straight instead of a curve. So I basically just trace it and then straighten up the curve. Now it's time to close the darts. This process is also going to be easier if you press the darts so it kind of stays in place as you sew. So you just want to make sure that the lines are matched on the back and the front. And I like to start sewing the darts on the wider end. After that, I overlock all the edges except for the necklines. Next, I will join the shoulder seams following a 1/2 inch seam allowances. And now it's time to work on the collar. So as you can see here, I have an iron-on fusible interfacings. So I fused the interfacing in the wrong side of the collars. To give the collars some pizzazz, I decided to add this eyelet trim. You want to place it on the correct side of the fabric. And then I am going to base stitch it just so it is secure when I place the back piece of the collar. I match the correct sides of the fabrics and I'm going to stitch along the edge, just on the outer edge. Trim off excess fabrics, and then I'm going to grade the curves, so when I turn the collar right side out, the fabrics or the collar is going to sit nice and flat and fabulous. I'm going to push out the trims really nicely, just make sure that I have a nice sharp corners, and then I am going to give these collars a good press. After pressing, I am going to top stitch the outer edge of the collars as well. Now it's time to attach it on the neckline. Just be sure that you place the collar at the center of the neckline. It should match perfectly because it came from the same pattern, and then you're just going to sew along the edge. And after that, I am going to grade the curve. Doing this is going to release the tension along the curve, and the neckline is going to lay flatter if you release the tension. So now it's time to wrap this edge using a bias tape. I made my own using some scrap fabrics, so you'll want it at least 2 inches wide and slightly longer than the neckline. I place it on the right side of the collar and I'm going to sew along the first crease of the bias tape. And because there are so many layers of fabrics here, I decided to trim off a little bit of the plaid fabric just so it's not super thick along the neckline. Then I'll go ahead and fold the bias tape and fold it one more time to hide the bias tape. And make sure that the collars are not sitting against the dress. Make sure that is kind of fold away or open up like this because you don't want to sew it under. Just take your time when you're sewing. Be sure to smooth out all the wrinkles because you don't want to do that. It's going to give you an ugly finish and you're gonna have to redo it. And this is the finished colors. I absolutely love how they turn out. It looks so perfect and sweet. The next day, I started working on the sleeves. I went ahead and overlocked all the edges except for the shoulders, and then I did a gathering stitch on the shoulders. For the hemline of the sleeves, I decided to add the same lace trimming I used for the collars, so I basically place it on the hemlines on the correct side of the fabric, and I'm going to stitch it right here. And if I haven't mentioned, the lace trim was actually from an old bed sheet that I used for one of my DIY dress before, so I managed to save this one and use it on this dress. I'll go ahead and fold it out like this, and I'm going to top stitch it. That will secure the lace and it's not going to fold in inside the hemline. Here I am just marking 2 inches away from the hemline. Wanted to shear this part right here so it will give that nice little ruffle on the hemline. I ended up adjusting it. Instead of 2 inches, I decided 1 inch is enough. At the end of the day, it's going to be what you like on your dress. That's why I love sewing, because you can really customize it to your design. When I stitched the elastic on the fabric, I was stretching the elastic as I sew, and the stitch length is about 4. It might be different on your sewing machine because my sewing machine, the longest stitch length is 5, so it could be different depending on what brand are you using. Go ahead and sew the side seam of the sleeves. Next, I am going to close the side seams of the bodice. So gather the shoulders of the sleeves. Sewing 2 rows of gather stitch will give you beautiful gatherings. I'll go ahead and match the right sides of the fabrics. I also match the seams first and then pin all the way around. By the way, my daughter was so involved when it comes to designing her dress. She pretty much put all the design details that she wanted for this dress, and she was constantly checking on me every 10 minutes. And then I'm just going to sew it all the way around to be sure you don't sew over a wrinkle. So this is the progress. I finished the bodice, collars, and the sleeves. Now it's time to work on the bottom. So I basically fold it in half and then fold it one more time. This is going to be the easiest skirt ever because we don't really need a proper measurement for this because the idea is we just want it to fit on the bodice waistline. So here I am just drawing an A-line skirt pattern. And on the bottom here I am going to kind of angle it. So as you can see I mark 1 inch and I'm going to angle it. You don't want it completely straight because the sides of the dress are going to be longer than the middle of the dress or the skirt. But if you are going for that look, that is not a problem. Also, if you are concerned about pattern matching, you might wanna kind of don't do what I'm doing here. Actually, the back seam matched perfectly, which I was so surprised about, but the side seams aren't matched perfectly. So it's okay. I really love the quality of this fabric. It is thick enough that I don't have to use some linings. I bought this from High Fashion Fabrics. Should have 2 pieces and now I'm going to remove this piece so I can cut the back piece in 2 because we will have back seam. I'm going to add zipper at the back so the back pieces should be 2. Constructing the skirt is pretty straightforward. You're just going to match the right sides of the fabrics and sew along the side seam so you will have a long piece of fabric. I sewn 2 gather stitching on the top of the waistline for each panels so I can easily gather them. And then I match all the seams together. The main idea is matching the skirt to the waistline of the bodice. So just be sure that you evenly distribute the gathers because if the other side is overly gathered, it's not going to look good. So you just take your time to spread out the gathers, spread out the love. If you are still watching this tutorial, thank you so much. I truly appreciate that and I hope you are doing really well. Now it's time to make it permanent. I am going to sew along the waistline, attaching the bodice and the skirt together. As you can see, I am kind of helping my fabric a little bit, making sure that the gathers will not move as I sew. It should look like this and you should give it a good press. Now it's time to apply the invisible zipper and I have a tutorial on how to do this. I'm just going to have the link in the info card or at the end screen so you can go ahead and refer to that. After that, I am going to close the back seam, then trim off the zipper and secure it. I'm telling you, the skirt back seam pattern matching is just pure luck. And here I am going to be attaching this ruffle. This is pretty much 3 yards of white fabric and it's about 4 inches wide. I finished the hemlines already so it will be so much easier once I am done with this. So I pretty much pin it to the correct side of the skirt and then gave it a good press and the dress is completed. Oh my goodness, I absolutely love it. I also made this bow just to give an extra touch. Oh my goodness, isn't she so adorable? I absolutely love how this dress turned out. I'm actually really surprised that she wanted me to make a girly dress like this because her style is a little random. So sometimes she wants to be an anime character and sometimes she wants to be a cottagecore. So I'm not complaining because I get to make cute dresses. She actually called this dress a Lolita dress, but I told her cottagecore is much better because Lolita dress are borderline costume in cosplay, but this one is kind of a wearable. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy this tutorial. And if you'd like to see more, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, and be sure to hit likes and share this if you could. That will help my channel grow. Thanks so much again, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!